Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of the Cerebellum Podcast. So, a few episodes ago, we talked about 3 steps that you needed to take in order to lose weight, and especially lose fat and build muscle going into 2025. Now, we're already in 2025. It's pretty much the end of January of 2025, and so hopefully some of the episodes have helped you already to begin your process of losing fat and building muscle specifically. If that's not your goal, well, good for you. That's 90+% of people's goal is to be able to lose fat and build muscle in the US. So if that's not you, well, good for you. It's probably just building muscle. So regardless of where you're at, this is going to be beneficial to you. So what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking about how many steps you should be taking on a daily basis, how to figure out how many steps you're already taking, and then coming up with a plan of how you can actually execute those steps on a daily basis. Because at the end of the day, if you're not doing something consistently, then why are you doing it at all? If you're trying to create a habit, well, you need to do that consistently. And steps and getting your steps in are a habit that you'll need in order to, well, you don't need, but are very, very helpful in order to help you lose fat and build muscle. Okay, so in our last episode, we talked about nutrition and how you can use nutrition. So if you haven't listened to that one or watched that one, go ahead and watch that one after this one. And so today we're going to be talking about the second step, which is steps, funnily enough. But before we get into all of that, just wanted to sort of check in with you guys and let you know sort of like where we're at. So we're at episode 5 right now. And honestly, I love this podcasting thing, and I've been thinking about it. I think I want to get some guests on here pretty soon. So like, if you guys have any guest ideas of, you should get some sort of dietitian on, or you should get some sort of, semi-pro, pro athlete on and talk to them, or Division I athlete or something like that. What would be helpful to you? What would resonate the most with you? And be beneficial to you. So think about that, and then let me know some ideas of who or what type of person you would like to have on here as a guest, because I would love, and I am so excited to have guests on in the future. But for now, you're stuck with me, so sucks to be you. Anyways, all right, so steps. Why are steps important? And first of all, actually, before we can get into that, what are steps? So steps are literally just you walking. That's it. When I say steps, I mean the amount of steps you literally take when you're walking. So you might say, Josh, well, that just seems so mundane. Like, why does that matter? Why does it matter if I have to track my steps, my walking? Like, what? Who says that? But the reason that you need to track your you don't need to, but the reason that it's really, really important for you to track your steps if you want to lean down is because steps, in my opinion, are the best form of cardio that you could do if you want to lose weight. Now you might say, Josh, what? That doesn't make sense. Like, I went on the treadmill the other day and I went 20 minutes and I burned 300 calories. Or I went on the elliptical the other day and I did it for 45 minutes and I burned 500 calories. And I surely cannot do that with steps. Well, let me tell you something. If you walk, let's just say, 6,500 steps per day, which is about 3 miles, which might seem like a lot, but actually, if you split it up throughout the whole day, 3 miles, you've got, say, 16 hours that you're awake, right? And so that's basically you're walking less than a quarter mile per hour, right? And so some of you might say, well, I don't know if I can even do less than a quarter mile per hour. Okay, well, that's fine. Start where you're at. But let's just say hypothetically you do 3 miles, which is actually very attainable for most of you. If you actually do 3 miles, that's at least 400 active calories burnt in your day. 400 calories. So you might say, Josh, well, hold on. If I'm burning 400 calories walking, like, why am I doing the extra cardio? I don't know, mate. Why are you doing the extra cardio? I don't know. No, seriously. Look, I mean, cardio is great for your heart health. Everybody knows that. Like, I do cardio. I run twice a week because I enjoy it. It's a stress reliever, and I know it's good for my VO2 max, and so that's why I do it. But if your main thing is I need to lose weight, that's the most important thing to me. Your number one form of cardio should be steps. End of story. Now you might say, well, okay, all right, if I need to do steps, well, how do I measure them? Great. So if you are a normal person and you have an iPhone, your iPhone already tracks your steps. So as long as you have your phone with you, which most of us have it with us pretty much 90% of the time, 95% of the time, then you'll pretty much get what your steps are in the health app. So you can just go onto your phone, check health, the health app, and see how many steps you're doing per day. Now, if you're a weirdo and you do not have your phone 90 to 95% of the time, okay, first of all, props to you. I don't know how you do it. That's fantastic. I wish I had your I don't know if it's discipline or ignorance. I don't know. But first of all, props to you if you don't have your phone around you pretty much 24/7. That's fantastic. But secondly, if you do not have your phone around and you don't have like some sort of watch or Fitbit or something like that to track your steps, then you track it in miles, right? So for most of us, right, the places that we are going to be walking are going to be places that we're familiar with. So for example, if we want to get more steps in throughout the day, and we'll talk about how you can actually, make a plan for yourself in a minute. But if you want to get more steps in the day, you're probably going to be in trying to get those steps in places like your neighborhood, or you're going to want to do that at, say, the gym, which is super easy because you just go on the treadmill, or you do it at work, around your work. So all you do is you figure out, okay, from, let's say you're starting at your house. From my house to, say, the stop sign, which is over yonder. If I walk for like 30 minutes or so, I get to the stop sign. Okay, cool. What you want to do is you want to go on like Google Maps and you want to say, okay, there's a stop sign. How far is that from my house? And it'll tell you how many miles it is. Now, if you know how many miles it is, then that's easy. This depends on the person, but about 6,500 steps is about 3 miles. So if you want to divide that by 3, that's about 2,000 steps per mile. A little bit over, but about 2,000 steps per mile. So if your goal is to get, say 10,000 steps in, which is fantastic if you can do that, and that's sustainable for you, fantastic. That's about 5 miles per day of walking. If you want to get 5,000 steps in per day, right, it's about 2.5 miles of walking, okay? So these are the ways that you can figure out how many steps you need to do on a daily basis. And just for a second, going back to why it's also important that you are prioritizing steps over other forms of intense cardio is when we walk, right? We walk around all the time. And we don't run all the time. And because of that, our body naturally has evolved to need less energy in order for us to do something very, very low intensity like walking, versus needing a lot of energy and fuel to do things like running, because we don't run all the time, we walk all the time. So naturally, we don't expend as much energy walking as we do running. Therefore, our body doesn't need to tell us, hey, you need fuel, you need energy, you should be hungry, right? Right after we do a walk. But if we do a run, what happens is we get hungry. And this is something to do with a hormone in our body called ghrelin. Now, I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of this, number one, because I forget a lot of this stuff. But also, number two, for the simplicity of things, it's just easier to know that if you're doing higher forms of cardio, you are going to be more hungry versus lower forms of cardio. So that's why it's so important to track your steps and to prioritize steps, because if you're trying to lose weight, you want to make sure that you are eating less than you are burning. And if you're eating less than you're burning, well, you don't want to be hungry. And that's what's going to happen if you're doing higher forms of cardio all the time. But now that we've understood, okay, why is it important? And then number 2, we've identified, how can I actually track my steps? Now we need to put in place a strategy for you of how you can actually execute this. So first of all, identifying what is your goal? What is your goal? And an easy way to figure out what your goal is to figure out how many steps you're doing right now. So like I said, if you have your phone or if you don't have a phone and you figure out, okay, how many steps per day am I pretty much doing? So let's say that's 3,000 for easy numbers, 3,000. Okay, well next week, can I do 3,500, which would take you, that is a quarter mile more per day, which is probably, there's so much math involved in this. This is the reason I became a personal trainer, so I wouldn't have to do things like math. But that would take you probably 10 minutes of walking extra, 5 to 15 minutes for a quarter mile. And so the reason I say that instead of just going, hey, get 7,500 steps per day if you're starting at 3,000, is because that's not going to be sustainable for you. And when we're thinking about losing weight and we're thinking about building muscle, this is a long game, right? This is a marathon, not a sprint. So we need to figure out how can we make this as sustainable as possible so that we can progress over time. And the way to do that is to create sustainable systems like walking, like steps. So if you are walking, say 3,000 steps per day, add 500, do that next week. If you can do that pretty much every single day, let's say 6 days out of 7, next week, great. Boom, move it up another 500. Same exact process. Boom, 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 until you get to a step count that you feel is pretty much the most you can do in a day and also is aiding you in losing weight. So for a lot of people, that'll be anywhere between 5 to 10,000 steps. So I always recommend that people aim for 7,500. Because also if you look at all-cause mortality, there's a graph that shows all-cause mortality and then your steps. And so essentially, if you get more steps, what happens is your all-cause mortality rates, so basically your chance of premature death, goes down, which would make sense. But it's a curve, so the curve sort of plateaus after about 7,500 steps per day. So if you're getting, say, 2,000 steps per day, your all-cause mortality, right, risk of premature death and getting diseases and that sort of thing, it's very high. But if you get to 3,000, it's a little bit lower, 4,000, lower, boom, 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 lower, until you get to about 7,500, and then it still makes a bit of a difference, right, going from 7,500 to, say, 8,000 or 9,000, but it sort of plateaus. And so you're not going to see much of a significant change after that. And it's also not sustainable for a lot of people. So 7,500 is a good goal for most people to get to. Now, like I said, if you're at 3,000, get the extra 500 and do that for a week, right? Because even if you do that, if you do that in less than 10 weeks, you'll be at that 7,500 mark. Less than 10 weeks. So play the long game. This is the long game, losing weight and building muscle. But you've got this. And I mean, this is something that you don't have to think a lot about. You just say, okay, well, if I get 3,000 steps in per day, what am I getting my steps in? Is it just me walking around the house? Okay. Could I get up literally 5 minutes earlier and go for a walk for 5 minutes? And then after dinner, go for a walk for 5 minutes? That would literally get your quarter mile in. That's an extra 500 right there. Boom, done. And then as you go on, you might say, Josh, well, do I have to keep getting up earlier? Maybe. But think about the risk if you don't. Think about the risk if you stay at whatever weight that you're at right now, or body fat percentage, or visceral fat, which is the fat around your organs that is correlated to things like cardiovascular disease, stroke. Think about what happens if you stay there. I don't know about you, but I'd probably rather wake up 30 minutes earlier and get some steps in, knowing that would actually help me lose weight and build muscle over time. So think about it always from that lens. What's the risk reward? So to go over what we talked about with the steps, number one is I sort of identified, why steps over other forms of cardio? Number two is, how do we measure steps? How can you measure your steps? And then number three, how can you actually execute this strategy? How can you actually put this plan, this system of getting more steps into place? So those are the three things that we talked about. If you have questions about this, I would love to answer them. I'd be happy to do that. And so that's it for today. What we're going to be talking about next podcast, so next Sunday, is we are going to be talking about the third step that you need to incorporate in order to lose weight, and specifically lose fat and build muscle in 2025. Now, like I said, last episode, if you haven't seen that, we talked about nutrition. In this episode, we talked about steps. And then, not tomorrow, next week, we'll be talking about resistance training, what you need to do in order to lose fat and build muscle through resistance training. So very, very excited for that. Hopefully you guys are getting a lot out of this. And if not, well, ask questions. I'm right here. You can message me on YouTube. You can message me on Instagram. All of that information is in the bio. So if you have any questions, I'll get to them. And yeah, just use this as a resource, my friend. Use this as a resource. Look, a lot of this information you might hear and you might be like, wow, this is a lot. I don't know if I can handle all this stuff. I mean, you're saying I need to change my nutrition, my lifestyle, my steps, my habits, everything. It's okay. It's all right. Just take it one step at a time. Literally, from the theme of this episode. Just take it one step at a time. You got this. Millions of people do this per year. Millions of people lose weight and build muscle. Millions. You can do it too. You got this, man. All right. I will see you next week. And like I said, if you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below. All right. Peace.